Of all things I could not have bet to hear on this Sunday is that PlayStation invoked one of my favorite terms that I like referring to. It's not my favorite thing to occur, but it is a reality of such magnanimous proportions that, as I've said before, no one is immune from. Check this out. PlayStation is increasing their prices, and they're actually saying that this is based on a backdrop of economic challenges. A challenging economic environment, including high inflation, fluctuating exchange rates, and so on and so forth. But this particular article is actually not about them. What this is about is their games. Oh man, because you see, there is no safe haven for any producer in the market from market forces. There are many ways that they can go. Xbox right now has created for themselves a very interesting environment that has money coming in from many different sources. You know what I mean? And we're going to talk about that advantage here in a second. Because it seems for the most part, people have been heralding PlayStation. They sold all these consoles, 75 million, and I'm thinking to myself, well, what else are they doing? Because if one thing actually trips, I don't think that they're as hedged as they would love to be. They really would love to hedge themselves in different ways. Tom Henderson writes and says, Marathon isn't the only extraction shooter aiming for the $40 price point and is scheduled to release later this year. Arc Raiders by Embark Studios is aiming to do the same. He puts a video gameplay clip from 5 months ago of Arc Raiders. It's about 6 minutes. This is early test gameplay from October 2024. So there is another extraction shooter, and I think somebody said to me today about the Bungie thing, like, bro, Bungie's Marathon is the only extraction shooter that would probably land on console. And I was like, yeah, maybe Bungie is, in a good spot. And then I see this, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe we need to go back and revise that. Maybe we need to go back and say, okay, what in the world is this game going to be bringing to the table? In looking at the gameplay reveal, now, I don't know if this game is going to land by this year. I mean, sometimes you see this stuff, you see advanced gameplay and all that, but this was gameplay. So you never know. They might be finishing their polishing and, all of that stuff, but there's no doubt that this is going to bring some competition to Marathon. See, I enjoy playing third-person shooters if I play shooters, okay? And so for me, I'm going to look at this game and go, if I'm going to play an extraction shooter, this is more like in my wheelhouse. Many of you have seen my Division footage. The reason I play the Division a lot is because I like aspects of the game, but most importantly is the third-person side. If this game slaps, if this game hits, and it's asking for $40, and Marathon comes out and it's asking for $40, the game already filters out everybody who's not a first-person aficionado. Not saying that there are not enough people, but now here's what happened right now. Some economic factors have already entered into the conversation based on what the market's going to look like for Marathon. This is not even talking about the already existing, games that are out here that are also probably going to be taking people's attention, or people are probably going to maybe eventually go back to should Bungie announce a price point of some kind. These particular things are always going to be necessary when anyone is talking about the gaming industry, because for some strange reason, I don't know what it is, everyone wants to abandon it. They want to run away like, oh, these things don't even matter. But the companies themselves are pointing as, factors that they have to take into account. Whether or not these factors are, affecting them or not, we don't know. I mean, I guess we can't even look at too much and say, what are we going to see here? All we can look at is their profits. And I looked at their profits and I was like, these margins are thin. These margins are not necessarily as, fat as they could be for a company of such a size. And this was actually written by the vice president, global marketing, Sony Interactive Entertainment. This is not something that was written by, say, a social media account in a sense. This is like a release saying, hey, and it's basically coming, in a very interesting time, April 13, 2025 on a Sunday, quietly. They don't want the PR, blast. Very interesting timeline to, go ahead and iterate this stuff. Do y'all remember when I showed you guys this book on competition and strategy? It's a textbook written by Michael Porter, Harvard professor of economics. Do y'all remember when I told you the threat of new entrants as a very valid market factor or the threat of substitute products or services as a very, very core piece of the competition, I think Tom Henderson has basically opened up this can of worms, and it's actually very interesting. Now, what's crazy is Arc Raiders was supposed to be a free-to-play model, right? But apparently Tom Henderson is reporting that they shifted to a paid model. And they also shifted from PvE to PvPvE. Very interesting stuff, what's going on. Now, shooter fans, right, are probably going to be enjoying themselves and they're going to have access to a lot of games. But guess what? There are many other shooters in the market, which is also kind of that competitive force of existing players within the market, which will be these cats over here, the threat of, the threat of substitute products or services. So in the shooter category, for the mainstream PvPvE and all that stuff, you already have Destiny, which is also in one category. You have things like Apex Legends. I don't know if Apex Legends, I don't. I'm just going to throw in shooters out there, okay? And we'll look at the games that gamers are playing the most. You look at Fortnite, you look at Call of Duty, you look at all of these shooters, and when you start filtering down to extraction shooters, even though they're not many, we're not even seeing that these extraction shooters are heavily played compared to other titles that are out there. This is exactly why I can tell you that, when PlayStation starts to cite market forces, everybody needs to go ahead and pay very close attention to what's going on. And even if they cite market forces and say, oh, this is why we want to go ahead and raise our hardware price, you have to also understand that these market forces are also going to be hitting software across the board. It's not just going to be only a game like Marathon, right? What's even crazy too is, this is also very interesting, is Marathon is trying to come out during the September timeframe, the fall. This kind of season, ladies and gentlemen, is actually very weird. What else is coming out in the fall possibly? Potentially GTA, potentially Call of Duty. I just don't realize, or I guess, how do I put this? I don't realize yet how dangerous these people like to play. You know what I mean? Or maybe they want to ride the coattails of the launch of these games and probably bring out a much less expensive option and be able to maybe capture a size, a piece of that market. But you're trying to fight against two established titles of that kind. I don't know. So we're going to have to wait and see how things go, because a lot of people somehow have forgotten that the gamer who is heavily affected by these market forces is one that has limited resources. Without the resources, how are they going to go ahead and engage with and actually purchase these games? When, again, not only do they have to look at their resources, they look at substitutes in the market and see that these substitutes are everywhere. It's going to be a very interesting time for a lot of these games in the next few months. Hopefully, they can make it out and they can actually get a good cohort of gamers and players that would actually play these games. Nobody wants a development studio to go through those hardships. But I'll rest my case here. Talk to me in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching the video. Appreciate you guys' time and audience. Peace out.